to welcome the Queen of Spas, Susan Harmsworth, to the stage to moderate our distinguished panel on investors in the spa industry. I think everyone mostly knows Susan as the founder and CEO of ESPA International, and she's widely considered the most successful entrepreneur in the spa industry, with over 450 spas in 55 countries to her credit. She was awarded an MBE, which is kind of like being knighted by the Queen of England, although we're not supposed to call her dame, or we can call her a lady. She was awarded this for her outstanding services to the spa and beauty industry and her influence over many years and around the globe. Her charms are legendary, but I asked many people, you know, what should I really say about her? What is she really like? And the best thing I heard was they said she does everything with integrity, honesty, and diplomacy, but not always diplomacy. But my one question is, can I get 50% off on a pedicure? Come on up, Susan.
Well, this is the graveyard shift, and I thought we'd be empty, and I thought you wouldn't want to do numbers. So I'm really excited, and thank you all for coming after the picnic. As you know, it's over 40 years this year that I've been in the industry. And one of the reasons I'm, thank you. One of the reasons I'm really thrilled to do this panel is increasingly over the years, I've seen a big disconnect, especially in the emerging markets, between owners, investors, hotel operators, and spa operators. And I think even those of us at the very top of our game don't really always understand the numbers. So I've got two very eminent panelists, and if we've got time at the end, I hope we'll have time for some questions, so think of them. But if you can, think of them more generically for the industry rather than those that would be personal. So my two guests, I've known Omer Isvan for many years. He's the president of Servotel, and I really admire his model. It's an unusual one, and he's the advisor, usually to an owner, and he will come in at the beginning of a project to help conceptualize and stop them making mistakes, appointing consultants, helping to find investments, helping to master plan and make sure that the whole project is viable. And for those of you who work in that kind of industry, you know how often we're confronted with projects these days which aren't viable. And he also manages owners' expectations, which makes people like my job much easier, because owners' expectations, especially in China and Russia, Balkan states, South America, are really often misaligned. And what we do as spa operators, and I don't mean me, I mean all of you in the industry, is often really not understood. So Omer, president of Servotel, please come on stage and we're going to quiz you to death. And then Manav Thadini. Manav is chairman of HVS India, and has been responsible for developing over 800 projects in India over 15 years. And the reason I'm really thrilled to have Manav here is he's also an investor. He heads up an investment fund. So it's great to sort of have people who are responsible for projects, but also really know their investment things. And one of the things I really want to kick off with is, I don't think we all know, some of you group people might, because you might be privy to those kind of things. We don't know expectation of return on investment, and often over what period, and often CapEx. We never get to the bottom in spas of our CapEx. So I've got questions like, for instance, I'm being confronted with instances where I'm being asked to run the spa and, say, the pool and the gym, but the ROI will never be viable because the pool and the gym should really be with the hotel. So that's how we're going to kick off. That's going to be a first focus to see if we can get to the bottom of that. So Omer, I know we've spoken about that. Why don't you kick off?
Okay, big question. Start with expectations, really. I think I'd like to make it into a into compartments, into four simplex compartments, whereas the emerged markets investing in the emerged markets investing in emerging markets investing in emerging markets, and emerging markets investing in emerging markets. So there's, I don't think I can actually. I mean, I'm surprised how I said that actually. But those four show distinct characteristic differences. And you know, just by example, an emerging market investing in an emerging market, we're talking very numbers game. And it's very much driven as return on investment, return on equity, and payback periods, etc. But obviously, at least in the investments that we're involved with, they're not standalone spas or typically not destination spas, but as part of hotels, resorts, or mixed-use developments. So obviously, the focus is on the total returns and the total ROIs on that investment. And where does the spa feature within that is pretty much your question. And how it is divided between other components of the hotel. Well, spa doesn't feature anywhere, actually, until very late in the game, unless right people are on board in the beginning. It is either a headache in terms of the investment line, that it costs a lot per square meter compared to a lot of other things, and unknown quantity in terms of returns, unless there's the right people in the beginning, again. And therefore, it is looked as a necessary evil because hotels have to have spas, and you know, that's the perception, and God knows who conceived it in the beginning, how big, how small, how integrated, how separate. But it's very much numerically driven, and so it's return on investment and equity. ROE translates into the emerging markets, investing in emerging markets. All of a sudden, the same ROE becomes return on ego. And there, it is a different, there's a different approach where what the spa should look like, feel like, and what the wife of the investor likes, which products she favors, and the touch and feel. And really, the numbers become much secondary in that respect.
Until year 3.
Of course. And then all of a sudden there's an asset manager, because they've just found out there's something called an asset manager that has to come on board, and that asset manager has to make his worthwhile, and therefore start squeezing everything, and then all of a sudden look at the profitability analysis of the spa, and that's when you get into trouble, when the gym and the swimming pool and even the outdoor pool and everything is bundled into the same profit and loss line, and really the costs are not allocated properly, and that it looks like a loss leader, and that it's questioned whether the loss leader is in fact leading anything or not.
Can you hold that thought? Because I'd like to talk about cross-charging next. Manav.
I think, you know, like Omer mentioned, I think it's very important to understand the kind of investor you're dealing with. And you do have two sets of investors, the guys who are looking for ROI and those who are looking for ROE, and the E is really the ego. And if you're in the spa business, I guess you really want the ROE investor, because he's less concerned about the amount of money that's going in, how much returns he's getting. He really wants to go out there and put the best product out there, and he would spend a little extra, would not really measure every square foot that's getting used. So I think it's very important to try and understand which kind of investor are you dealing with. I think there's another fundamental difference. The bigger brands do not really look at spas as being really big revenue generators for them. Particularly if you're in this part of the world, you look at a 5-star hotel, the spa revenue represents just 3, 4, 5% at best of the overall revenue. And therefore, the importance that's given to that is a lot less as compared to, let's say, food and beverage, which could be 50%. So I think the bigger brands certainly are not that hot on this. They'll rather focus on the room sizes. They'll rather focus on how many F&B outlets they put out there. And for them, yes, if they can outsource the spa part of it, I guess it's an opportunity as well for a potential investor to come in.
One of the things we're finding is we start off with an owner and investor, and then you have your hotel operator, and the two expectations are completely misaligned. So year one, if we project a loss for the spa on operations on a P&L, they're always trying you to push, they don't want you to make a loss. Hotel operator starts to get involved and then obviously doesn't want to give us any benefit for the spa at all. So from a cross-charging point of view, what we're finding, and the reason I brought up about pools and gyms, was I've got examples, for instance, where we've got a residential tower, we've got minimal space, and I've said to the owner, well, let's bin the pool. And he said, no, I need it for my residential tower. So I've said, well, put the CapEx to the residential tower, and then your spa is going to stack up. How do you feel about cross-charging? Because at the moment, I think, and this can come up in questions later, there's very few examples of where a spa operator, be it in-house or be it third party, is getting any credit at all for the spa, even if people are using the pool and the gym.
Well, I think when we look at a hotel spa, in the bigger picture, first of all, the mainstream brands are jumping on the bandwagon by simply creating some sort of a vision paper or some sort of a brand paper on a spa and putting together certain elements that are supposed to resonate with potential developers and owners and claiming that actually they're a hotel operator full-fledged, they can operate rooms, they can operate conferences, MICE business, they can operate food and beverage, and they can operate spas. Well, unfortunately, we're finding that with a lot of mainstream brands, that it is not the case. It is just a name, and it is just a brand that was haphazardly put together. Admittedly, there is a lot more resources aligned in the last half decade so into it, but so far we haven't seen realization with the mainstream brands. I'm not putting all hotel brands together. So first of all, let's identify one type of hotel spa with a brand is actually the in-house brand of the hotel operator. And it does not look like a profit center, it's just a department in reality on the profit and loss and on the investment. It's only when you come into the equation as an outsider and an outside spa operator and a brand, that's when things are scrutinized a little bit more in terms of what kind of a profit center it is and what kind of a synergy or lack thereof is going to be between the hotel operations and this alien that is moving into the ecosystem of their comfort zone, so to speak. So you challenge that comfort zone very well. And in our experience, so far so good. It has had positive impacts, that discomfort. But somebody's got to manage that discomfort of the alien coming into that ecosystem.
Yeah.
And typically it is up to kind of us to be able to educate parties and integrate parties to understand what we're talking about. Otherwise, yes, you're going to be up against being bundled with a lot of CapEx allocated to the spa and everything around it, rightly or wrongly. And then once you're in the OpEx, even more. And expect, whereas they would be the owner would be educated by the hotel company in the bigger picture by saying, hey, listen, there's a pre-opening expense in terms of training, getting the whole asset ready to operate, and perhaps for a year you have to finance losses to get this hotel established and penetrate into the market. They would not be educating in the same way for and on behalf of the spa. So it was almost that the hotel is going to go through that kind of a growth period, but the spa is going to come and perform day one. So there's that misalignment of expectations there that we need to manage before we get into even allocation of costs and things like that. That's a micro issue that we can deal with. It is the expectations that, and when an outsider comes, the expectations are much higher than a hotel operator's own brand, which is basically just like housekeeping or security or whatever. It's just a managed function.
And do you think that's one of the reasons we're having such problem in the industry with benchmarking?
I want to point out something. I mean, you're sitting in this room, right? How many major brands are represented in this room? And there's really no one. You know, you have the Oberers and Taj here because they're here. But if you look around, why isn't there anyone? Maybe I'm wrong. Why isn't there anyone here from Hyatt, Marriott, Starwood?
There is.
Okay.
There's some.
There are a few, but
some.
not the same level of attention that you would probably get. And I don't believe that brands look at spas that seriously enough. But yes, When you bring in a specialist, then you want to actually hold them more accountable. But when you don't have a specialist and you're going through the annual budgets with the brand, when you're looking at something that is considered to be a much smaller percentage, you end up focusing on other areas far more than you end up focusing on just the spa part of it. And I think that's part of the problem.
Let me give you a very micro example, and Manav is going to understand it right away. In the uniform system of accounts, the way we look at hotel P&Ls, there's all these departments, and then all of a sudden it breaks, and then there's the undistributed operating expenses. And like energy, repairs, maintenance are bundled into that undistributed. I'm not suggesting that this is right or wrong, except that the spa, for example, is, and other departments also, is that, you know, they have their revenue, they have their direct expenses, and then that's it. They make a departmental gross margin, and then all these undistributed expenses are shared between those departments in no fashion at all bundled together. Now, if it was a hotel's own brand of spa, that would be a no-brainer. This is our uniform system. Heat, light, and power, repairs, maintenance is a bundled item. Mm-hmm. The minute that a third party comes, we start fitting meters into the spa and say, we're gonna measure how much water you use. All of a sudden, you know, if it wasn't in-house,
no, I get all of that, and this is what I'm saying. We get these loaded P&Ls,
I know.
You know, with every single thing, marketing cost, you know, everything,
and that's
but
not in
no
the
benefit back.
Yeah, that's not in the uniform system, actually. It's just for you. You know, we fit meters for you. You know, we monitor what
third-party operator, not us.
What's Susan doing? You know, I mean, it's like I'm going to look at your gas consumption, or electricity consumption, or how much air you breathe, and everything.
But do you both think that this is why? Because we had several forums this morning, and what came out of it was we need more benchmarking. And I know that Anne and Andrew have been working very hard to try and get that benchmarking happening, but there is not one model. There's so many models, so there's not apples with apples like there is in hotels. And secondly, people aren't prepared to share.
I think benchmarking will certainly help and go away, you know, some ways in convincing the brands as to, like you said, look at it more fairly, because right now those meters aren't there, but they suddenly come on board when there's a third-party operator. And it's the same thing whether you bring in a third-party restaurant or anything, right? The minute you can pass the buck on and your bottom lines are hurting, you're just looking to recover some of those costs. And I guess it's but natural that happens, and it's unfortunate.
I know there's several people in the audience who've got projects and they are looking to attract investment. What do you think spa operators can do, or spa entrepreneurs can do to really attract that? Is there a specific way of structuring a P&L, of, you know, what period of time are investors looking at? Is it 3, 5, 10 years? What sort of things do you think they can do? Because they don't have benchmarks, so it's not even, I'm sure you guys do spa P&Ls, but...
Of course.
I think it's difficult for, I frankly don't know too many investors who would just go into spas, because I really deal with the hospitality space. But, you know, like I said at the beginning, it's the ego-driven investor that you ideally want, who's not looking at a time frame, who's really looking to get into this. And there are a lot of them out there.
Are they really? I thought they were decreasing.
At least in this part of the world.
It's increasing.
There are quite a few of them who are there in it because they're there to better someone else, or they're there to please their wives. But there are investors out there who are willing to put good money into some of these projects, and they have a much longer time horizon. Would an institutional investor come along and look at spas? I think there'll be very few, and those are the ones that we keep thinking that'll come, but they never really knock on the doors, because they're looking at, you know, I don't look at investments into spa on what kind of yield or return I would get. I'm really looking at it, how much per square foot am I going to use, and if that was the opportunity cost, could I convert that into meeting space or F&B or additional rooms and generate more revenues out of it?
So you would never look at the secondary spend or the general
I would look at
kudos or brand
perhaps
enhancement?
Perhaps I would look at maybe, particularly in the luxury space, is it giving an enhancement of 10–15% to my room rate?
Yes.
Right? I perhaps would look at that. But I think more importantly for me would be if it's a market which is urban in nature, right, where land is very expensive, whereby putting in instead of 150 keys, I can put in 160 keys, then I'm probably more in favor of putting in more rooms. It's less hassle, a bigger bottom line that comes out of it.
Well, I would argue with you with that on the 5-star market, because we've got several models that, not 3 and 4, but on 5, because we've got several models that are very busy Monday through Thursday with business guests and day spa, and then at the weekend the hotel's empty, and I can quote you a few, I won't, but where we're putting 30–40% occupancy into the hotel on a Friday night, Saturday night, and sometimes Sunday night because of the spa.
I think it depends on market to market, right? So maybe I'm referring more to India,
okay.
And it could be different because in India, I guess it's probably real estate is very, very expensive, and therefore, given a choice in terms of return on investment, I would probably be more in favor of rooms. But if I was in a leisure location, definitely you want to have that spa, and without that, you won't be able to sell those rooms.
Have you got anything on
Well,
that?
I mean, we conceptualize hotels sometimes very much spa-centric. It isn't always a mathematical formula that what the spa will yield directly, but indirectly, and sometimes doesn't necessarily need to relate to room night production out of the fact that there's a spa and it'll cover up the soft ends of the either the weekly or the annual spectrum. In the week periods, the spa will boost it, etc. Sometimes, well, this is the day and age of differentiation, and you can't just get away anymore by building just another hotel. So you have to uniquely devise each and single hotel, and sometimes spa can become quite a central issue, a central conceptual element of a hotel, in which case we would have to look at it in a holistic manner rather than spa scrutinize its own feasibility and its own payroll and profit line, etc., etc. So it's kind of a sophisticated balancing act there, depending on the concept itself.
Now, we've got 8 minutes left, so I'd like you to answer a few questions sort of shortly, if you don't mind. Sustainability, the reality of sustainability rather than what we all wish for. Is there a wellness model that you know of that is attracting finance? And can residential spas, where there's no external market?
So can I go on sustainability?
Yeah.
Because
it's one of your babies, I know.
One of the third hats I wear is I now head HVS sustainability globally with an office in Miami. We got into this 2 years ago. You've not heard too much about it because it's still in the process of launching it. But one of the big things that we're working on is benchmarking. Today, when we talk about sustainability, it's all about touch and feel, but no one is really looking at numbers. And what we're trying to do is that by going green, you can actually save energy, you can actually save on waste, you can actually save on water consumption, and actually bring a bottom line increase in your thing. So we're seeing that most hotels can save anywhere between 1 to 3% of their bottom line by being more sustainable. And that's the direction that we're trying to take it to.
Fantastic.
I think environmentally consciousness and sustainability are pretty close in terms of concepts. And I think we have to look at the generation that's coming up and the guests that we're going to be serving in the next couple of decades rather than what our experience has been to date. And that's going to be dramatically different. What we're finding, we had research done 2 years in a row on, in fact, we put a provocative title to the research to say that is luxury an opposing element to sustainability. who wants to have reduced water on their shower, et cetera, et cetera. Who wants to switch off air conditioning, et cetera, that kind of thing. But what we saw was the upcoming generations, it's going to be a checklist item. You're going to be actually excluded from their radar screen if you're not only environmentally sensitive, but also socially responsible. I think these things are going to have a merged effect. Rather than separated effect. And so the personality of a company or the personality of an establishment is going to be measured against their score on a multiple of facets, including social and environmental responsibility. And it's going to be whether yes or no. And if you're no, you're out with that generation. It's very, very interesting. Whereas the existing customer profile, we certainly don't see too much premium on that.
Okay.
Yet.
Thanks for that one. Mixed-use facilities and residential, very different models. Have you got any residential models that you know of that have got very good spas that aren't open to the public, and are they viable?
Are open to the public or are not?
Are not.
Okay.
Because they're exclusive.
Oh, can I take that one, Manav, for
ahead.
just a quick one? It is really a scale issue. When we develop a very exclusive residential estate, particularly on the second homes, vacation destinations and things like that, it becomes almost a must. And it's just a very sensitive element as to how to manage that must.
And how do you pay for it?
How to pay for it, and where is the critical size element in terms of the cost load, where the residents are happy to share, and then the rest is pay per use, and whether a balance can be struck, which should be.
I don't believe per use, because if we've got to run a spa...
There should be two elements. There should be two elements, because if it's all fixed, a lot of people are going to bitch. So there's got to be an element that actually pays for its existence and sustenance, and there should be an element that is actually pays for the actual treatment, if there is one.
But then you could have therapists hanging around for days if it's not open to the public.
True. So to make it break even, at least, there's got to be a gap.
Okay.
And that gap should be the fixed amount that everybody pays to have it there.
Okay.
Okay.
So
we have some of them in India as well.
Well, I'm doing one in India where actually they're going to include the treatments as well in the in the service charge, because they want to keep it clean.
I wish them luck on the 5th year. Initially, while the developer is there as still the sponsor of the event and making sure that it's a successful venture, it'll be a honeymoon period. And after the 3rd, 4th year, when the developer wants to kind of say, bye guys, I hope you have a great time here, onwards, with the Homeowners Association, good luck.
And then if we go on to the wellness model, have you got one, Manav? Have you heard of a wellness model that's looking for investment or that's attracting investment? And if you haven't, that's fine.
No, I haven't. That's not my area, so unfortunately I can't.
Interesting. And how about you?
Oh, mainly destination resorts. I mean, wellness elements in the context that we have heard over the last 3 years here, last 3 days here, in that form of depth and substance, does not yet come into play within the mixed-use developments or within hotels and resorts, but as standalone destination elements. And yeah, we know some. We know some to be quite successful as destination, wellness destination institutions almost. I mean, we wouldn't call them hotels or resorts. They're much more medical angle or sort of naturally medically oriented.
Okay. One more question before, well, a question on 2 before we go to Q&A. And I think we're going to have 10 minutes Q&A, are we? We're good? Okay, so very quickly, do you think a standalone spa without a hotel or other support businesses is viable? And does franchising or leasing work with 5-star hotels?
I think both work. I think certainly a standalone spa does work well. We've seen it in India. Spas are typically able to give a 35 to 45% bottom line. As you go to Thailand, that number goes up, or if you go to Indonesia, it's even higher. If you go to London or UK, it's down to 15, 20. Maybe I'm wrong, but... Standalone,
I'm talking total standalone, loaded with costs. So carrying all their costs.
At least in India, these are numbers that I can validate. It is 35 to 45%, and they work quite well, and they give good competition to the hotels as well, and they're pretty successful.
Okay.
And they're coming in places where I wouldn't want to go, but that's from a customer's point of view, right? They're in a mall which is noisy, you're right outside a movie theater and people are going in, so I wouldn't want to go there. But
and are they spas or salons?
They're spas.
Okay. Because that certainly isn't the case in London.
No, these are spas which offer you 3 or 4 different types of
okay,
treatments.
interesting.
Well, I mean, on a smaller scale, we're not specialists in standalone spas, but on a smaller scale, my observation is that the very successful ones have been person-centric as to somebody, some sort of healer or some specialist on whom the establishment is formed. So he brings with him or her the skill set or the natural gifts that would have some sort of transformational element. And then if the standalone spa is built on that skill set or in that natural gift, we've seen great successes there. And of course, they give a huge run of money for any competitor around in their niche skill set. And that is something that I think the spa industry should be thinking about, rather than going through the drills of HR recruitment and say, you know, the receptionist, therapist, or Thai therapist, et cetera, I think we should also have some sort of a rotational skill seek that would bring in transformational individuals from different parts of the world for a period perhaps, et cetera, because I think the discerning spa goer is going to react more and more into real transformational touch, whether it's touch on the physical sense or on the mental or spiritual sense. And that's something that I think standalone, smaller establishments do well with.
My view on that, and I'll let you finish, is I think standalones can work. And my very first spa in 1970 was a standalone. But I think they're driven by individuals. I think they're very difficult to roll out.
Yep. I think to answer your second question, do they work and would you lease out or rent out or whatever you want to call it in mixed-use developments? The answer is most certainly yes. We have hotels, we have vacant space. We would love to bring in, lease that space out to a spa because it's complementary to our services that we're offering. So I think that's something that is going to work. Maybe the brands need to come up with what I would call a Spa Express version. I'm not too sure if there's something of that nature, but I think those are the versions that will really work, at least in this part of the world.
Bonnie, are we ready for...
So a little more than 5 minutes? Great.
We've got 5 minutes Q&A?
Yeah. Okay.
Fantastic.
We've got one here.
I am Ali from Saudi. I come from a Unilever background, but I established a beauty salon and day spa chain in Saudi, where from a regularity point of view, does not exist. But we have a 2022 beauty salon and day spa in the market. We use the beauty salon to make it a traffic builder.
Fantastic. Do you have a question?
My question, I do support that the standalone spa services just make a tremendous gross margin for the services versus the beauty. So I'm confirming in at least this part of the world, it can make profit. And we also, it can be a chain and it can be manageable.
Okay, thank you. Can we, I want to be fair to the back of the room too. Is there a question towards the back? Nope, okay, go ahead.
G'day. One thing we struggled, we launched the Spa Benchmark, certainly around sustainability about 5 years ago. And it was an interesting comment you said earlier where you didn't want a sub-meter. That's the biggest struggle we have, is actually getting the data. Getting the data. So one of the issues is trying to convince owners to install sub-meters around energy, water, so we can actually get the data so that you as an industry can understand what the benchmarks are. So how do you convince owners to invest in the assets to do that? Because we really want to have the data so we can share it with you.
Owners, I don't think, are they go to that level of micromanagement. I think that will be down to the operating strata. I think that is something that should be driven by the hotel operator and the spa operator, and they should, this type of forum is going to help a lot into entering some sort of protocols between yourselves, where exchange of data becomes, as we did it in the hotel industry pretty successfully. We can benchmark hotels now all over the world, really. The minute that you have 4 hotels and above in any destination, we can pretty much get all the data. And the spa industry has not done that yet. But that protocol does not really involve the investor. The investor will bless any such protocol amongst hotels, and other than individual owners who may be very protective. They're not part of the interest.
I have a slightly different view, because we struggled with the same thing. And we started off with benchmarking in India and in the US at the same time. And we really failed, even though we had the connections out here to the Raymonds and the Oberoys and everyone else. But I think what we realized in the US is that you get hold of the asset managers, and the asset manager is only interested in making sure that the bottom line is stronger. And if you can get him on your side, he will have those sub-meters installed. And that's what we're working with. And right now, it's an uphill task. But if you've got the first 2, 3 groups on board, and they start seeing what kind of information you can get from the benchmarking, and they can then start measuring themselves, even within their own portfolio. Yep. Many of them are then willing to put that sub-meter in, and actually you can use it to your advantage. Because even as a spa user, within your spas, would you not like to know where you're using more water and for what reason vis-a-vis the others? Because that's something you like to control.
We're metered in a lot. We're metered in a lot of our spas, and increasingly so. Okay. Yes.
Got a question back here?
Gina.
Thank you. More than a question, is a comment regarding what you were saying about either putting an extra room or a couple of rooms or a spa. I'm an investor. I don't own a spa. I'm an investor of hotels. And I would definitely, in my numbers, I would put a spa versus an extra room, because I think anybody that would go to a hotel without a spa now, unless it's a tiny hotel, less than 40 rooms, I think they would just not go. I think any hotel over 50 rooms needs to have a spa, and I think I would definitely, I think it's a thing that you really have to put in your numbers, even though it doesn't have a ridiculous return on investment.
Is she saying it needs to have a spa or ESPA?
No.
ESPA.
I think my comment was really meant on that I would have to justify the area that's given to a spa. I don't think so I'll ever completely take out a spa.
The size.
And it depends on where I am. If I'm in a location like Bombay, where I'm only getting 80 rooms, I might want to reconsider that. But I think it really depends on where I am.
Andrew, you want to say something? I hope you're going to give us those Mandarin stats we've been trying to get so long.
Yeah, I will give you the stats at the end if you want them. I'll do that as well. But,
no, but the ADR increase and all that stuff.
That's part of the question. So. Well, first of all, I really appreciate you guys up there, because we're actually talking about the nuts and bolts of the business, so that's great. I love it. Secondly, not working for one of the big brands, of course. So in my humble opinion, I can only give from a minor brand.
Speak up.
I can only give an opinion from a minor brand. Do you not think you're measuring the wrong metrics, for goodness sake? Come on. What about the premiums on the room rates that you get without the spa? Or what about the food and beverage? I do measure that. And in our spas, I know that having a spa doubles the food and beverage revenue for every person that spends in the spa. It puts 77% on the room rate. It adds an extra day to the room. And there's a 33% likelihood of them booking a suite. So come on, measure the right metrics.
Okay, let's do that. First of all, luckily, you're not one of the mainstream brands that I was referring to. Unfortunately, we have to generalize. In certain types of brands, certain type of operator, or certain type of concept, when I said spa-centric, the spa's impact is not measured with its own metrics at all. I said that earlier on, that we look at it as a holistic investment proposal, and if it is spa-centric, what does the spa do? Whether to room rates, to occupancy, or even the feel-good factor, or even if none of those, how competitively advantageous you would become in a given market against ones that are not spa-centric. So we go into the very esoteric elements even. Thank you for the numbers that you also give us, which help. But we go down to even the esoteric. So I agree with you, but it is very much dependent on the concept. And I don't think we can ever say that on typical mainstream cut and paste brands with a spa versus without a spa.
I think, you know, we would never do a feasibility for a Mandarin or a Peninsula or an Oberoi or one of these luxury brands without a spa component. And typically, when you then go out and project the rates of occupancy rate or even the F&B revenues, they already are pegged higher. And it's obviously for some of these other reasons. It's not just the spa, but it's the other elements that all come in. So I think we capture that data. And what we're really talking about is I don't believe the mainstream brands look at that data that carefully, whereas the luxury brands perhaps do spend some time on it and will bring in an ESPA. I doubt it if a mainstream, I know I'm going to ask for trouble if I start naming brands here. No. But
we don't do that.
Because I have brand operators who we've got who are our operators, and I know they don't look at it. You know, so.
Can I conclude, I think we're out of time,
Yeah,
by saying that I also think, I really am appreciative of these two because they're hugely busy and they've flown, well, Omer's flown from Turkey and Manav, Manav drove, but anyway. It's a personal view to conclude. I also think we need to start fighting our corner more. And that's you group people and us as individuals to get the P&Ls loaded in the right way. Because I am really getting fed up with being charged for absolutely everything and then getting no credit back for, as I say, people even using the pool and the gym and things like that. So I think those of you at the top, you know, who are operating either multiple sites or consultancy, I think we have to start fighting that corner more, A, to get the benchmarking, and B, to get the P&Ls correct. Yes?
Yes. Yes, yes. Of course, but we would always turn around and say, okay, that looks very impressive, would you commit to it? You know, that's the type of next step that we need to iron out.
So that's the next conversation. Will we guarantee?
That'll be next year, right?
Yeah, next year. Thank you very much, everyone.